And we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Rise Up. So grateful to be here with amazing, amazing individual being of light on this planet, Hamilton Souther. And while we're building some traffic here as people are logging in, I just want to take a moment to introduce Hamilton as the CEO and master shaman and chairman and founder of Blue Morpho, co-founder of One Energy Global, and Source Independent Entertainment. Hamilton is a visionary indeed, a visionary leader, a speaker, author, and renowned master shaman. And he's also an international leader for Amazon sustainability and conservation. And more than this, just an individual that's up to something on the planet, up to being a beneficial presence on the planet and expressing that divine idea known as Hamilton in really amazing ways. So Hamilton, welcome to Rise Up. So grateful to have you.
Thank you so much. Those are really nice things to say, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. It's a real joy.
My pleasure. And I'm just pulling up here really quickly on my phone so that I can see our talk. Because sometimes on the Facebook Live technology, I don't get all of the notifications and see all the wonderful people and questions. So I'm super excited to talk, but I want to see what the folks are saying. Here we go. We're coming on live here. Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Now I can see we have lots of folks joining us, Hamilton. And now you won't be able to see the comments. So on occasion, I might just interject what folks are saying. But we've got some really beautiful welcome, Deborah and Allison and Karen and Samantha and Mark and John and so many more folks. Too many to name, but welcome, welcome, welcome. So Hamilton, man, tell us about what's going on in the world, in your part of the world. You're in Peru.
Yeah, we're in Peru. We've been riding the big COVID wave and living the great disrupt. It's been
Yeah.
quite an amazing time, but we've been looking for the positive in all of this. It's been, quite a time of great change. And I think ultimately it's going to be a massive awakening on the other side of this to a much deeper truth about what we're all experiencing together. And really, we've been looking to how to reach people in a digital format and how to be able to keep spreading the message of the medicine and the idea that spirit is real and part and parcel of all of us and something that we all share in a great message of oneness and truth and love. And it's been a time to be really creative about that. The typical ways that we did that over the last 19 years were obviously disrupted. But it also was a time of, great expansion. It was also a time to go inward and really understand what life is on a much deeper level. And it was, I think, fundamentally a time to go deeper into our practices as a way to find strength and solace in such massive changes that happened over such a short period of time. And, it's been different for lots of people all over the world, but where I live, the world was hit really hard. And basically everything was shut down for an incredible amount of time. And because of that, it was a massive, like in one moment, change. It went from literally one day to the next. And so we've just been really figuring out how to, reach people during this time where we know that the need is still there and, there just isn't the ability to travel so much, especially internationally. And so we've turned to the digital means to find all different ways to express our love and gratitude and our community of positivity and support. And, that's really what we've been doing. How about you guys?
Wow. I'm just like nodding at all of the things that you said, especially this message of oneness and that spirit is real. And I really, as I was preparing for our conversation today, there were some of those aspects that I really am looking forward to talking with you about. I come from a metaphysical science of mind, new thought background that led me to plant medicine, and I see the two as completely congruent, no contradiction, and so I really want to dig in. I just want to put that little seed crystal in there so that we can continue that conversation. But to answer your question, We are excited here at Rythmia, and I think most of our listeners know by now, we're opening up November 1st as the Costa Rican government has opened up travel, free and easy access for all 50 states to the United States to come to Costa Rica.
Wow.
So we're starting November 1st with all those folks that we had to reschedule, from March, right? So people with existing reservations are coming in November and December, but we are currently, as of right now, accepting reservations for 2021, and so this is exciting. Also, Rythmia, man, outside my door right now is so much activity. I'm down in Costa Rica right now at Rythmia, and we are completely remodeling. So, like as you said, this is a time to go within. This is a time to renew our practices. This is a time to welcome new skills, new talents, new capabilities, new capacities as we release something old and something new is emerging. And so what's emerging new at Rythmia is new rooms. We're remodeling every guest room. I mean, new floors, new windows, new fixtures, new toilets, new sinks, new showers, like new everything. Brand new pool, really preparing the place for this return. And so this has been a very exciting time as we're watching this transformation, like what's transformed on the property, and the newness that's emerging is in alignment with what you spoke on a spiritual level, that we're doing, right? That renewing and rejuvenating, that newness that's coming from this time of disruption.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's what's going on down here, man. And we're excited to be working with you on all those levels. So, what you and I have had conversations. We were supposed to be talking about business, and we ended up talking about life and spirit and practice and so many other things. I enjoyed it so much when we would just sort of riff together. So I'd love to bring that sort of flow and energy into this conversation. And I really want to explore a little bit about your backstory, your process of germination. I think that's so interesting. So you've been in Peru for like 20 years, is that right?
Yeah, I first came to Peru in 2001, and it was from a spiritual calling. I was actually literally told in visions that I would be going to Peru and seeking out shamanism. It was before plant medicine became a thing. And everyone back home was kind of like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "No, this something's real is happening here." And I ended up coming down into Peru and going all over looking for plant medicine, but ultimately ended up in the Amazon and in my first ceremonies. And it was in those ceremonies that I had the epiphanies and the visions that would be something that I would dedicate myself to for quite a long time. And ultimately ended up living very deep in the remote part of the forest in the Peruvian Amazon. And I had the absolute, joy and honor of being able to apprentice to two incredible master shamans. And one was in his late 80s, and his prize student was in his 40s at the time. And the two of them took me down a traditional path of apprenticeship in plant medicines. And that really looked like an extensive deep dive into first learning how to live in the Amazon, completely off grid, 24 hours from the city of Iquitos, and a good 5-hour canoe paddle from any place that you could even make a radio call out of. It was, truly remote. I was the last house on a tiny little river, and I built that house with my own hands. And when I was 23 years old, as a place to be able to do my apprenticeship, and that was the start of Blue Morpho. It was an amazing time. It was just incredible. It was living off of the land. I had to learn how to do that and learn how to live amongst the locals and the natives and make friends with the natives, which is a wild experience in its own right. Ultimately gain their trust and be allowed into their circle of medicine. And from there it was, apprenticeship, and apprenticeship was full time. The apprenticeship was years, and it was really just a combination of a large number of plant medicine ceremonies of all different kinds, as well as dietas, which were a really big part of the practice. And so that was it. It was a wild ride through my early 20s.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you said that you had this vision before you ever did plant medicine.
Yeah, Yeah, I my spiritual awakening happened spontaneously. I decided in my early 20s to give my life to spirit, to the idea of great spirit, and this idea that there was something guiding more than just the ego. And I wasn't really very impressed with just the soul ego based world. I wasn't critical solely of it, but it wasn't really enthralling to me. I saw that there was a massive unhappiness amongst most everybody that was part of it, even though that there was also a massive amount of wealth and accumulation. But there was also this general kind of malaise that was also there, that was very palpable through my early years growing up. And I saw that, I thought, or at least thought at that time, that spirit could be an answer ultimately to that. And so I gave my life to that concept, that there is a deeper guiding force to all of this, and opened myself up to that guide. And lo and behold, I started to have, ecstatic experiences that were completely natural and on their own in my early 20s. And more I opened up to spirit, the more I saw, and the more I sought guidance on what that could possibly mean. And so I sought guidance through mostly shamanism. I also sought guidance through normal therapy and things, just to do the check to make sure I wasn't becoming delusional or something like that. And actually, I was really supported by both therapy and by the shamanism, but the shamanism ultimately made the most sense. And so at that time, I would do trance ceremonies, simply put on different kinds of trance music or trance drumming, use authentic movement and dance, and go into a state of trance. And in there would be messages, and there would be very clear communication of what to do next. And early on, there was a lot of doubt that those messages could possibly be real, or they were just coming from myself, and ultimately there was just so much overwhelming confirmation that came, that I had to take them very seriously. And so they actually literally guided me to Peru. I was told I would go to Peru and that I would find these shamans, and that the shamans were literally waiting for me. And the shamans I ended up meeting and working with had actually confirmed that years later, that they had seen me in visions for over 10 years, and that they knew that I was coming. And so those early visions were actually corroborated by them without knowing even the story. I never told them that I was told these things, and they never told me that they had seen me in vision, and that we finally, after a period of time, both kind of let the cat out of the bag, and we said, hey, this had been brewing for some time, and we talked about it, and it was all corroborated. So I don't know exactly why, other than Great Spirit is a tremendous mystery, as well as life and the universe and this incredible state of oneness is this giant mystery. And as you open up to it, miraculous things happen. And I took those things very seriously. And so those miracles guided me to these people that ultimately took me down the path of plant medicines. And grateful to have survived apprenticeship, which was quite intense in its own right, and then grateful to have graduated within our lineage to being considered a maestro, which means a carrier of the medicine, or someone allowed to offer ceremonies. And super grateful really for the community that was established and developed over the last 20 years of sharing this with the world, and being one of the pioneers to really describe the potency and importance of this kind of medicine to the world.
I love that connection that you had prior, and I want to ask you a question about that, because so many people that I talk to just in conversation, and plant medicine comes up, and we're all in contact with some pretty amazing people who have their own connection with spirit, apart from, like, a profound and dynamic journey with this divine intelligence. And so you were receiving those divine impressions before plant medicine, but decided to devote your life to spirit through plant medicine. I guess the question then is more like, some people feel plant medicine is a tool, one of the tools in their gig bag, their spiritual gig bag, but not the only means of connection. But it was so profound for you that you chose to devote your life to it. Can you speak a little bit to maybe those folks who say, I'm good, I go really deep in meditation, and I don't really need to experience this?
I mean, fundamentally for me, the plant medicine was something unique unto itself. And I thought that that was its own sort of mastery. Meditation's meditation, and every spiritual practice is literally its own spiritual practice. And I don't think they can be compared. And I think when people try to compare them, they're missing something. Each one has its own potency, and I respect literally all of them. If anyone has received benefit from any practice, I think it's a valuable practice. And in the case of plant medicine, what I got really interested in was this pharmacopoeia of the Amazon, and being able to hang out with these people that had literally thousands and thousands and thousands of years of continuous lineage and practice. So imagine a group of people that had been passing down this knowledge about plants, not just visionary plants, but all of these different plants, literally hundreds and hundreds of medicinal plants that included visionary plants. And they knew how to use them in this incredible way, and they didn't have a written language, and they would speak these mythologies, and through the visionary ceremonies, they would actually transfer the visions and the knowledge of how to use these plants, the visionary ones and the non-visionary ones, to the apprentices or to the students. And it was really a field of its own kind of medicine. And it was so enthralling to me that you could learn through this direct connection, this mind meld between a master shaman who understood these plants, these visionary plants, and then this way of healing people, that I was immediately drawn in. And so it wasn't just about a spiritual practice to me, it was about true healing. And it was about a kind of medicine practice that was truly unique to itself. Like there's Chinese medicine, and there's naturopathic medicine, and there's Western medicine. There was this Amazonian medicine that was truly unique to itself, that wasn't just based in the visionary plants, even though over the last 20 years they got all the fame. It was this other way of treating people. And what drew me in was both the incredibly intense experiences I had in plant medicine, which were by far the most healing and most revelationary and revolutionary experiences I'd ever had, all rolled into one. But it was also seeing these people help locals that had no access to any other kinds of medicine and perform miraculous healing. And to me, the healings were truly miraculous. What I would see people that had already been sent away from local medical outposts where Western medicine was said to no longer be effective, and they were going to be literally left to die, the elderly and babies. And they were healed. And I remember a day, the day that really was the day that everything cemented for me and said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, was a day where I had been in ceremony the night before. It was a plant medicine ceremony, and I was learning. And so what that looked like was that I would drink the plant medicine with these two other shamans, and we would go into vision, and they would show me in vision how you work with the plants. And I would see in the visions direct communication with the beings that came from the plants themselves, like a direct mind meld with plant consciousness. And the plants would teach me things, and then they would show me animals, and they would teach me things. And it just happened that night I met this rainbow black jaguar. So I was in this vision, and this rainbow black jaguar came to me, and this huge head of this rainbow black jaguar, and it sang to me this chant, literally sang to me a chant called an Ikaro. And I received it, and it's a multidimensional field of energy that's all the colors you could possibly imagine, and colors you've never seen before. And it's incredible. And through this multitude of colors and prana and energy, these waves of sound came into me, and it literally became part of me. Now, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea that anything was coming. No one told me anything. The next day at about 4 p.m., totally now in a state of sobriety, completely now normal, 2 canoes come up the river, park at the port next to my house, way out in the middle of the jungle. And there's a native family in the canoes, and the mother is holding a baby, and the baby is semi-conscious and eyes rolled back in its head, and they say it's going to die. And they just come to me and they say, please help this baby, please help this baby. And right then in that moment, all the hair on my body stands on end. I get this electricity through me, and I hear clear as day a voice that says to me, grab your shakapa, which is the leaf rattle that they use in ceremony, and sing to the baby the same ikaro that you heard from the jaguar. And I grabbed the shakapa and I sang to the baby, and I am not kidding, within 15 minutes the baby was nursing and totally conscious and healed. And the baby had not nursed for 3 to 4 days, was semi-conscious, and was literally, thought to be left for dead. And that chant that I had learned in that ceremony healed that baby, and that baby came back to life. And I got to have the incredible experience 6 years later of being on a riverbank and actually ran into now the 6-year-old who was that baby. And that changed my life. After that and that miraculous healing that took place, I understood that there was something so deep in this medicine that I needed to go deeper with it and go to that level where I could fully understand what had happened. Because at that time it was just a mystery to me. All I did was follow the guidance of spirit, and that baby was healed, and the whole family was crying, and it was an incredible thing that bonded me with that native tribe, who ultimately kept me safe and kept me alive through the years that I apprenticed for over 4 years in the forest, living out there, by myself, all alone, learning from the shaman. And so that was really what made plant medicine so special to me. And then after that, it was an experience of working with people from all over the world and seeing how fast transformation could take place. And it didn't mean that was, how fast they could integrate that transformation, but people who are just truly blocked, like blocked from being able to get past depression, blocked from being able to get past different kinds of traumas from their life, PTSD, things like that, would come to plant medicine ceremonies, and they could, through these miraculous visions, leave it all behind in a night, in 2 nights, in 3 nights. And it wasn't like that for everybody, but I didn't think it had to be, because there wasn't a treatment in any medicine that was for everybody. Right? Medicine worked for most people of a kind of medicine. If it worked for most people, that was good enough. And that's what I saw with the plant medicine ceremonies that we were holding, is that there were more positives than any kind of negatives, and there was more healing, and there was more transformation, and the benefit that it ultimately gave people was true to itself, something unique. And I thought that could be then supportive of their meditation. And I thought that could be supportive of their prayer and their work that they did in different kind of religions that they participated in. I thought it was a means to a kind of jumpstart or to move forward in a very progressive, very fast way to another kind of new understanding. And that was a very potent tool and an incredible kind of medicine. And I thought it deserved, in a tremendous amount of respect and ultimately notoriety. And so I shared the fact that this was not only miraculous, but this was literally common and part of this kind of medicine that had been going on for literally thousands of years. And I just like to say, to try to put it into perspective, that these ceremonies have been happening as an unbroken tradition since before there ever was Christianity. Since before there was the belief in Christianity, there is evidence, archaeological evidence, that these ceremonies have been happening and this kind of spirituality has been performed. And most incredibly is that the entire mythology of Christianity is told within the mythology of the plant medicine. And so not only has it been going on literally longer than Christianity, the understandings of Christianity and the understandings of one God and the understandings of spirit and the understanding of the Holy Spirit and the understanding of the Trinity is also built and interwoven within this indigenous mythology, along with all of the other spirit that's there. And so I really saw it as being a true encompassing and something that was truly miraculous. And so that's why I decided to, use plant medicine as a means to continue to grow and also support other people. But for my own practice, that wasn't all there was. I used all different kinds of techniques to integrate and to understand the medicines.
Just so beautifully said. So much in what you shared. I want to go back to the baby and the Ithero and the healing. I really want to hear your take on this, because I know, you were talking about direct knowing, mind meld, direct knowing, information being delivered in divine right timing, right? Just when you needed it, just what you need. And we're in this space now of merging Western thought and ancient wisdom, right? This is sort of the tendency. And I know that the Western mind, and I certainly born and raised in the United States. Um, there's a tendency to want to go, oh, let me figure out that explanation of how that healing occurred through our scientific understanding now. Well, the body's water and sound and vibration and healing, start to work through a quantum physics explanation of why a song could heal a child. And I guess I want to, not I guess, I want to know your thoughts on the validity of seeking that explanation through the Western idea, or is there another part of me that says it is what it is, and trying to understand it through the lens of Western medicine or the scientific analytic mind of physics or quantum physics is a malpractice to a certain degree. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that science is very young, and I think that's what people forget, that science is a method, and it's very, very young in our overall history about how we know things. And I personally, as much as I am a mystic and as I've been trained to be a master shaman, I'm also a scientist. And so I bridge all of those different worlds and believe in all of those different worlds. I think you can try to, with our current understandings, get close and approximate a theory on how this kind of mechanism is ultimately working. And I think you could do that. It's an exercise, but I don't think we're there yet with science to be able to fully explain, really to a point of scientific law, not just theory, but really scientific law on what's actually happening. And I think that the place what's missing is in an understanding of consciousness. And that consciousness has not been studied to a degree deep enough to fully understand how the consciousness and source and divine and existence and who we really are all comes together into one. And so there's still this great divide between the mystical and the scientific, and the idea of the quantum versus the macro, and the super tiny versus the super large physics. And there's debates going on within the universal language of mathematics about how that is ultimately described, and the theories are not yet all lining up. And so when that happens, I think people forget and they bond to certain kinds of beliefs. And then they just say, well, that's how it is because I believe it to be that way. And that's actually a spiritual or a religious argument, not a scientific argument, even though it's coming from a scientific place. And so I think what, I tried to do over the years with this is understand something from that could be rational and logical from within the ceremonies themselves, but didn't yet have a scientific explanation. And to me, what made it rational and logical was the repeatability, which is something that you look for in science, is that something can happen over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And what I noticed in ceremony was that once we all got into the trance, consciousness opened up in a way that is not ordinary for Westerners. And the individualization of consciousness starts to disappear, and you become much more aware and much more sensitive to literally everything that's going on around you. And the air isn't so dividing of the things around you, but it's actually interconnecting of all the things around you. And you start to see patterns in the air, and you start to see what people call the quantum with your eyes open or closed. And you start to see this geometric interwoven architecture of either consciousness or space-time that is truly multidimensional, that's not part of our normal waking state. And I learned through the mythology of the shaman that within that field there is this thing called spirit. And that spirit is part and parcel of the field, but there's also spirits, which are the shapes that the field takes, and they have a means of affecting another being, and they can be called upon through the form of invocation as well as through the forms of chants and ikaro, and they can over and over and over and over again positively affect somebody in what they call medicine. And that there is the nature of these chants that are truly called medicine chants. And those medicine chants, ikaros, we interweave the vibrations that make that interaction with spirit possible. And so people see it from the plants, people see it from the animals, people see it from the mythological realms like demigods and angels, people see it from the Christian realms with Christ and archangels showing up. People see source, people see divinity, people see God. And it can be sung over and over and over again, and it can be shared within the vision. And it's that transference of that energy and the transference of that spirit that ultimately creates that change. And to me, that is fundamentally miraculous in its own right. So I think you can try to understand a miracle through science. And I think at some point, at some day, we will have this union that happens where the metaphysical and the physical and the physics and the spirit and the religion all truly do come together into a unified theory. But I just don't think we're quite there yet. And so that's why I think of it as an exercise in trying to understand, but maybe fundamentally not the way that you get to the real truth of what's happening in that experience. For me, the baby was healed because Divine Spirit decided to heal the baby, and it was guided through a very repeatable and understood chant that I had learned from the spirits. And I was told that that was exactly how you learn this kind of plant-based medicine from the shaman. And I had been told that that's how generation after generation after generation they had learned it. So from the scientific mind, I was studied as an anthropologist, I could put all of that together into a very rational construct. I can say generation after generation said that this is how it works. I've done ceremonies where I've seen the other shaman do it, and it works just like that. I've now been training, and I've learned enough to be able to receive one of those and chant it, and it worked just like it was supposed to. And you get to the point where you don't need the visionary medicine to know that the chant is creating that vibration and creating that field around that person. And you have it at that time and now in your inner vision, so you don't need the plant medicine to show you, because when you work with babies, you can't administer them plant medicines. And when you work with really the elderly that are very sick, you also cannot administer plant medicines. And so it really does come through the transference of this thing called spirit. And to me, great spirit was what it was really all about. That's what I had given my life to. And so it was just a confirmation that great spirit is miraculous and true. And fundamentally, as an expression of truth, we are conduits of that if we open ourselves up to be that conduit. And it's not one person or another is special and gets to be the conduit. We are all equally that same conduit. It's only a question of whether we're willing to be that conduit. And so I think anybody who's listening is the conduit. I think you're the conduit. I'm the conduit. We all share it. We all share consciousness. We all share the I am. We are all part of the one. We are all part of the love and harmony. We are all part of the great perfection. And it's a question of just accepting that. And we've been told we're not. And we've been told to think of ourselves in a finite, isolated, closed off way. And because of that, then we close down that channel. Right. And then to open that channel seems scary. Right? It seems like, how could I possibly be that channel? Oh, that's ego to say that I'm of that channel. No, it was ego to tell you you were not of that channel. Right. It was ego to tell you that you were separate and doomed and damned. That was ego. And the fact is, you are of this incredible, miraculous channel. And it is there literally for everybody, just like the sun is there for everybody who opens up to it. And I loved in the plant medicine ceremonies that was something that people experienced. They experienced getting past that part of their ego that said, I'm not part of this, to the part of them that said, I am part of this. And then they would immediately become it. And they would prove it right there in that moment. And that to me was an expression of the divine and something that was truly awakening for people.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'd just love to hear your interpretation of this. You were speaking of spirits, of entities, of whatever lens or paradigm or construct that you're looking at this through, and talking about the very entities of the plants themselves, right? And yet in the context of the great spirit, right? The oneness. So will you articulate a little bit about the spirits, the entities, the various expressions of oneness, and the relationship to oneness, right? So that I think a lot of times people don't know how to understand Mother Ayahuasca or Grandfather Tobacco in relation to the great all in all.
Well, I think the great all in all is like the great equalizer of all of these concepts. And so the source is where everything comes from. And I think the easiest example is to use humans. What I love about humans and when I observe humans is that no two are the same, not even twins. And so every single human is a unique miracle. Every single human is on a unique timeline. Every single human is a unique expression of earth life. Every single human is a unique expression of heart and love. Every single human is a unique brain. Every single human cells are unique to themselves and only unique to themselves. And so if I look at that, I see that there's this idea of humanity. So there's one humanity, right? And then there's every single individual human who is truly unique and miraculous in his or her own right, who is part of that humanity. And that's how I see the idea of spirit and spirits, that we have this incredible ability in a moment, and just in a moment, to isolate one thing from the whole. It's not isolated forever from the whole. It's a moment that my consciousness allows me to see that plant and know that that plant spirit, Mother Ayahuasca, is Mother Ayahuasca. And then Mother Ayahuasca is again absorbed by Great Spirit into this incredible, field of energy that we have, no known source for. It is creation itself.
Right.
And so it is a continuous creating of this incredible source that has truly still a mysterious origin that we are all part of. And so to me, that is where the idea of spirit comes from, and spirit births ideas of spirits. And then I can take that same understanding to the plants, and I can say, well, there's all these different kinds of plants in the world, and they are all unique and individual. And roses are like that, and basil is like that, and thyme is like that, and oak trees are like that, and pine trees are like that. But then if I go to each individual tree, no two trees are the same. Yet somehow they're part of this great network where even through their root systems, they're sharing information and they're sharing nutrients. And these are things that have been scientifically proven.
Yeah.
And so I see that the great oneness is being individualized by our own consciousness, not individualized in an innate state in its own right. And so to me, that is the gift of consciousness, is the ability to know something and recognize it, identify it, see it in its own state, recognize it as Mother Ayahuasca or Grandfather Tobacco or Grandfather Wind or Grandmother Sun or Mother Earth, these mythologized or mythological understandings of what we are. And I think about that about Earth itself. Like, I like to think of the history of Earth. And Earth, many, many billion years ago, was a great cloud of stardust, larger than the current solar system. That was Earth. And then Earth, through these forces that are the same forces that keep me in the chair and you in the chair now, these same forces ultimately brought Earth together to be Earth. But for the greatest time that Earth was Earth, that had no life. And then something happened with Earth, that Earth started to reorganize itself in this constant change and evolution to now include what we call life. And then over that billions of years of changing life ultimately begat life that ultimately turned into us as life itself. And to me, that is the same idea of oneness becoming spirits and individualized entities and individualized concepts of this creation. And I think that our consciousness has done exactly that same thing. And because we've been so identified and individualized as me and that you and I are separate, we don't see that we are this field of consciousness, that we are all interconnected through this field of consciousness, and that's where that totality and that oneness truly resides in and through and around all of us. And I've always thought about it as a great paradox, that it is so one, it is so powerful that it lets us think we're separate. It is so powerful, Source is so powerful that it lets us think we're individualized. It lets us think that that's that thing and that's that other thing, and I'm this thing, and because I'm this thing, that's that thing, and that it's not all interconnected. And so I've always thought that is the greatest paradox of all, that Source is so powerful that the oneness can allow you to think that it's multitudes and multitudes and multitudes and multitudes of infinities of all different numbers, and how to break it all down into pieces. And that still is the oneness expressing itself. And I thought of it that it expresses itself through these currents of energies and through these channels like you or me or anybody else, and the plants, and that ultimately those were the spirits themselves. And so since I could see the pine tree, that was the pine tree spirit, and the pine tree could see me, then that's my spirit. And then now it's two spirits interacting, and that is still of the whole of the great spirit. And the beauty of life is that life itself has taken on so many different shapes and forms that we've been able to categorize it and catalog it into all of these different ways, so that we could know that ayahuasca is different than basil, is different than roses, is different than a pine tree. But we could also understand them all as plants, and we could also understand them all as life, and we could also understand them all as part of the universe, and we could also understand them all as part of oneness. And so that's kind of how I've always tried to experience that.
One of my favorite a teacher that I worked with in Ghana, Brother Ishmael Teta, would always say, "Nature is my teacher." And you just were a beautiful example of, a question was asked and you so articulately looked to the examples that we see around us to bring clarity and articulation to it. It's just lovely. I'm nodding, energetically. But I also would say, as you said, like the great spirit, the all in all, the infinite presence, the divine and loving intelligence, is so powerful. It lets us think this, whatever it is. And the thought was occurring to me, that this is the truth of unconditional love. I mean, love without condition or selection. And then in the course of your explanation, I was like, because another question that emerges, I think, for many people is, well, if God or spirit or the great entity, that love intelligence that governs the universe, is love, why are there evil spirits? And through your explanation, that recollection came, well, this is called unconditional love. It allows you to express, the gift of life is given freely. We can choose where on that vibrational rung we want to exist, and that it is all an expression of one. Light and dark are just an expression of more or less light. Hot and cold are just an expression of heat. All duality is an expression of one thing, and so that was also another. Would that explanation fit with your explanation? In other words, the explanation of why we might have lower vibrational entities. You might call them evil. You might call them disruptive or unaligned. But it's all one expression. Does that fit in with your cosmology around that?
Sure. If you do plant medicine and practice different kinds of visionary experiences, you come across this incredible mythology that within it has all different kinds of shapes and of these energies. Call them spirits, call them whatever you want. There's all these shapes people see. And it comes from all the different mythologies that you see in history. You can just go through books and pictures, and you can see it through all the world's religions. And so you can see this great, unpacking of the light and the dark and the good and the bad. And I always see that as a means of trying to understand the vastness and truly incredibleness of spirit. And I personally think that, human consciousness, what we call consciousness, has not evolved enough yet to evolve out of those things that are called evil. And I think that really we're the young ones. We're not the old ones. I think we're a baby consciousness to this whole idea of the universe having consciousness and expressing consciousness through beings that are, human beings. And I think people often forget, a kind of greater cosmology in time because their daily life is so, calendar oriented and getting things done. And, it's 6:30, it's time for dinner, it's this, that. They forget what billions and billions and billions and billions of years look like. And then on the other side of that, they forget what trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of years look like. And so when I think of human consciousness and I think of the nature of good versus evil that we're currently dealing with, that's a great mythology that ultimately, as you say, ends in a choice, and it ends in a collective choice to decide that the evil is no longer interesting and no longer valuable to us, and that a greater collective is more valuable. And we see ideas of that constantly come up, and that there's gaining influence and understanding around that. We also see that life from now to 300 generations, to 3,000 generations, to 300,000 generations, to 3 million generations of humans is going to be a continuous evolution in consciousness. And there may be times when we face a real difficulty or almost apocalyptic expression of our own consciousness to ourselves. And we have to decide at that point, is it worth harming ourselves? Is it worth harming humanity? Is it worth separating ourselves into all of these different categories and harming each other? Or are we going to ultimately have to band together and decide that we really are truly of a collective, and the collective is part of Earth, and that we are the great stewards of Earth, and that we have a responsibility to this Earth and to this life, and that we collectively make that decision? We don't know yet. And so in that, there is still this unpacking of consciousness, and there's still this idea of separating everything into duality, into this group or that group. And so because of that, I think of things as still being very young. And with that then comes that kind of exploration that happens when you're very young. And so then we can go to our children, and we can look at babies, and we can see how they try to explore and understand things. And we can understand that that's exactly what we're doing as a collective with consciousness itself, and ultimately what we're going to do with Earth. I think one of the beauties that COVID has shown us is that we do have a measured impact on Earth itself. Our global presence, our collective dance affects the Earth and life itself. It is not separate, and we are part and parcel of it. And that is part of the oneness of the life of Earth. And that now we can start to make a decision about that life. And that's a decision that will ultimately be made collectively. It's the same question comes in the idea of the raising of consciousness, right? And people will ask, if the consciousness is raising, why is there so much war? If the consciousness is raising, why is there so many famines and so many other negative things that are happening? And they say, well, the consciousness isn't raising universally, unilaterally. The consciousness is raising in different individual beings in smaller communities that together are ultimately little by little by little spreading a different message around life and what consciousness can be. And that doesn't mean that it's the sole way that consciousness is understood or expressed at this period of time, but it also doesn't mean what consciousness will be 1,000 years from now or 10,000 years from now. And so when I think of our lives, I think of it in that way where we're still facing this tremendous unpacking of consciousness where good is against evil in its own way because people are making it that way. And the evil is still powerful because people are making it that way. And they still want to fight instead of get along because people are still making it that way. And at some point, collectively, they're going to have to just decide, oh, we're making it this way. It's not happening to me. I'm doing this. And so if we collectively come and go, we're all fighting. Maybe we should stop. And then if we come along and go, we're all here of Earth together and we all eat basically the same food. And then like, hey, we're part and parcel with the plants. We all evolve together. I think at that point, you start to see a big change in the power that these negative entities have and hold over us in the form of fear. And I think it's ultimately boiled down to fear, and that fear consciousness has had thousands of years to grow within the population. And most everybody I know lives in a state of fear, and you can muscle test it. You can use applied kinesiology. And so that's creating it. And so that's still part of the oneness because we are part of creation. And part of what I teach and share with people is how to rewire the brain and change the nature of our brain state and our mind state so that we're not creating those things anymore. And then we can free our intelligence to start creating something else. So that one moment I can decide I'm no longer scared of the evil because I know the light always is stronger and more powerful than the evil. And in that moment that I truly bond with the light and I truly bond with love and I truly bond with oneness, I know I am of that oneness, and I know that oneness is not in a dualistic fight that can be defeated. And so that entire paradigm of fear and battle can all wash away into a balance between brain and heart. And then that oneness can become the field that is the I am, and that's something that we can all share together without ego getting in the way of that because it's supposed to be different. You're supposed to have a different I am consciousness than mine. Every listener is supposed to have a different consciousness, and we're supposed to share that together and ultimately be that flower of life that we see, that ever intricate pattern of energy and consciousness, and that is something that is currently evolving. And so that's why I think we still have this paradigm of light and dark, and we ultimately see it in ceremony. And that's what we help people overcome with these ceremonies. I mean, People have gone through really tough experiences where that expression of dark has gotten rooted really deep within them, and they don't know how to free themselves. And then we show them that it's actually really easy with the help of the plants. It's actually not a violent and difficult experience. It's not a hellish experience. I've always told people, let's go to heaven, and once we're in heaven, watch how the darkness just melts away. It's a change in vibrational state, and let's create that change together. We get together and we change the vibrational state, and we give, instead of a punishment to the form of darkness, we let it rise in its vibrational state as well. And when it does, it ceases to be negative, it ceases to be evil, and it ceases to be something that negatively harms. And then redemption can be had by all who are part of that experience, who allow that redemption into their heart and allow that redemption through their own soul. It can be experienced literally by everybody. And then that natural rebirth can happen that I find to be so miraculous and so beautiful.
Man, you're just singing in my heart, brother. Love hearing you and the way that this experience and intelligence is expressing through you, uniquely as you. So grateful. I got to tell you, I didn't get to any of the questions. I think I got to one question that I'd written down, but the conversation was so rich, and in the stories that you shared and the explanations, other things bubbled up, which is the way I love it. And so we're actually over our normal time, but it's just been, we're going to have you back, Hamilton, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about, and you're such a wonderful, wonderful guest. And you know, a lot of the comments, there's lots of hearts been going up and people responding so positively. So I know that this conversation will be beneficial for many as it continues. It's sort of an evergreen thing. People come back and listen, and so grateful, so very grateful to have you on. And just a short, if there's like a minute thing that you want to say, was there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to touch on? Is there something that you want to share before we close?
I just want to let everybody know that this great spirit that we're talking about is really here for everybody. And, you know, it's found through incredible places like Rythmia. It's found through incredible places like what we're doing online. We have our own online retreats through bluemorphoretreats.com.
We get to that.
No, I know. We do these incredible online retreats now, and we look forward at some point to, you know, seeing people again in the future whenever that could potentially be possible. I'm so glad for Rythmia to be able to be opening so soon. I'm so glad for plant medicine to be able to again be active in the world since the situation with COVID. But, you know, if you find yourself in a situation where you can't travel, or you're in a situation where these different kinds of plant medicines aren't right for you, or you want to have a kind of a shamanic experience to integrate your previous experiences, come to bluemorphoretreats.world and come check us out. bluemorphoretreats.world. We do a Trinity retreat. We have one coming up in a week. It's an incredible journey into shamanic dieta and ceremony and all the things we've been talking about. We teach you how to interact with the plants. And so that's it. Come visit us and join our community as well. bluemorphoretreats.world. Super good time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And that's such a beautiful piece that you can join the online community, experience these beautiful ceremonies with you, and then come down to Rythmia and drink some ayahuasca.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. All of the beautiful folks that have been commenting and loving and sharing online. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow. Jerry has his Facebook Live at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then we'll be seeing you on Thursday for Walking the Path at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So knowing that every one of us is walking in this amazing path of an ever increasing good, ever widening fields of awareness, and an ever deeper connection to the source, the oneness of all of life. And so it is. Thank you so much.